linked to Bristol.
Welcome back to Squawk. We're just seconds away from the release. The May Producer Price Index. Rick Santelli standing by at the CME in Chicago. Rick, the numbers, sir.
We are up 0.5. Up 0.5. This is big. Very unusual. This is coming off of a -0.7, and if you strip out the all-important food and energy, you're up 1/10. So this data is actually much different than many were expecting, and it underscores that there's going to be a lot of focus on things like PPI and next week's CPI, because inflation and Fed policy have been a big talking point. Many traders down here are more granular. They try to differentiate between commodity price movements, which aren't necessarily exactly the same thing. But no matter how you slice it, this number seems to be having an effect on the marketplace. Prior to the number, we were looking at a yield of 212. We're now 213. Briefly, so a basis point. You got a basis point out of the 10-year, but we will continue to monitor. I think many people, of course, are going to be maybe more focused on University of Michigan sentiment survey with all the issues of the day. I learned overnight that subscription type news, of course, has been around for a while, but you might be surprised at who some of the sponsors have been over the years. I had a source tell me at Michigan, for example, the Fed is a sponsor getting a subscription. They're a big regulator, so it isn't like this hasn't been well known. We're going to cover that number, and Eamon Javers is going to do a good job of keeping us in the loop on exactly what's going on. Back to you guys.
I want to go. You think somebody's going to offer $10 million to get it like 15 minutes early?
For a nanosecond.
Or 15 nanosecond,
No.
Rick, I just want to clear this up before we go to Steve on the reaction to this. From what you understand, the Fed is a client at the 9:55 number or the 9:54 with 2 seconds.
No, I don't know anything post Thomson Reuters. Okay, Thomson Reuters is really the story, and I think Eamon did a great job. But the story from 1946 up until Thomson Reuters' involvement, that's when the Fed and many entities were sponsors. They monitor the data. Country clubs don't let me come on if I don't have a subscription or a sponsor. The issue's high-frequency trade, I think.
Rick, don't move. We're going to probably come back to you, but I want to talk to Steve and get Dan's view on this number. Good number, but there's you can read this in a couple different ways.
It's up because of residential natural gas up 4%, gasoline up 1.5%, heating oil up 4.9%, foodstuffs, consumer foods up 0.6%. So food and energy rose. Take out food and energy up 0.1%. And what we do when we look at this survey, Andrew, this report, is we go back in the production process. So we look at goods with less amount of production or work put into them. Intermediate goods, and especially crude goods, is all the way up the pipeline. So that wheat would be a crude good and flour would be a finished good. So if I look at crude goods less food and energy, minus 2.3% month on month, it tells you that there is not a lot of inflation pressure. The only other thing I'd say about this is be careful going from producer prices to consumer inflation. A lot stands in between, and really what this is a potential mark of is company margins. When their input prices rise and fall, they have higher costs, and whether or not they can pass those along to consumer is the question.
So if you're sitting in Ben Bernanke's seat, how do you read this, and what do you do as a result? Or how does it change your thinking, if it does at all?
I would be surprised if he wasn't in the cafeteria getting coffee.
Well, the 10-year yield barely budged, right? So what does it tell you?
PPI, far less important than the CPI, but even with that said, the general trend is one of disinflation. 5-year forwards are down, implied inflation expectations are down. Inflation is not, as measured by the government, inflation is measured by the government.
But that's not enough, Dan. That's not enough. Really, the question on the table is what we're experiencing here, and this producer price number may give us a hint of that. Has it been a temporary issue, or is there a more pronounced thing going on where inflation is falling on a more permanent basis here? And that influences Fed policy.
I think the latter is accurate. And if you look back 20, 30 years, inflation rates have been falling, as have the 10-year yield, as has the Fed funds rate, as has potential growth rate in the economy. This is definitely structural, the decline in inflationary pressures. The question is whether or not it could be ameliorated somewhat through policy, and the answer to that.
Can I ask a really basic question? So the headline number looks really big, right? That would suggest to you the Fed would be more likely to taper, right? And then when you look at the core number, you would think, wow, they might be worried about deflation. inflation or disinflation, and then be less likely to taper, right?
Holding everything else equal, that's
Yes.
probably accurate, but the truth is, this number by
Not straight from producer price.
influences almost nothing.
You do consumer prices on Tuesday or something the Fed would watch, even though they would
And
watch
then if
more.
those go up, it'll be, you know, if it rains next to that fire hydrant or it was hit by lightning 3 weeks ago Thursday.
So this just has
It's
nothing to do.
cable, Rick. We peel the onion and we keep peeling and we keep peeling
But
it.
if lightning keeps hitting fire
Listen,
hydrants,
you know, there's one issue that's really the issue of the taper. It isn't the Fed changing its mind or having a goalpost that's on wheels with a Hemi engine on it. The issue is that they're disrupting the mortgage market with their purchases, and that is going to cause a taper of some sort. Now, whether they stop buying X amount in mortgages and buy that amount in treasuries, I can't tell you. But there are real logistic market issues that they probably need to contend with. They could float the number around.
Rick, what was
They're going to do what they want to do.
That's an important story, and we've been reporting that the guys in the mortgage market are worried that they're going to get whacked first. That what will happen is the Fed would, because there's this antipathy at the Fed to holding mortgages to begin with. When they think about getting back to normal, they think about a treasury-only balance sheet. They don't want to be owning mortgages at all. Right. And so the concern is that when the Fed starts to normalize, it normalizes on the back of the mortgage market first.
Can I just ask Rick to comment real quick? What's the view on the floor of that journal story we've been talking about all morning?
Which journal story?
This was the Hilsenrath piece about whether Bernanke was.
They're really
pulling things
interested
back.
to know exactly what the release schedule is for these stories. 3-4 weeks ago, the story came out, but it didn't come out in a timely way, yet the market moved. You know, so many of these guys are kind of looking at that as the same way as University of Michigan and all the other stories. But specifically, here's what they say specifically. They think Mr. Hilsengrath is a great writer, and they think Ben Bernanke's a really good guy, but they don't think either of these understand what it does to the marketplace.
Okay, Rick Santelli, thank you for that. Guys, thank you for the analysis. Coming up next, the housing turnaround. Is it on a firm footing? We're going to ask the Toll Brothers CEO, Douglas Yearley. Squawk Box is coming right back from the golf course right after the break.